Hello and welcome back to this session. Today, this is session number 2. Last week, I wasn't able to join. I'm Colin Cooper. I'm one of the co-founders of IXR. And today we're going to be talking about what learning evidence should still show. And I'm joined here with one of my co-founders, Megan Freeman. Megan, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Colin. Welcome, everybody. We're so honored to have you here. This is part 2, as Colin said, of our professional development series over the summer, where we're protecting the student thinking behind the work. Last week, we talked about policy, and we have a lot of AI policies that are happening at the school level, district level, and site level. And administrators are trying to figure out, okay, how do I take this really robust policy and implement it? We talked last week a lot about proof points, making sure that if the policy is there, how are you proving that students are learning? This week, we are taking it a step further. We are going into the design phase of the assignments. If AI can write it, students better be able to defend it, revise it, and apply it. I'm so honored to have Lucy Hutchinson here leading us in our professional development today, and Dr. Torrence Temple being the view of our awesome secondary teacher, but very excited for session 2. Here we go. Kicking it back to you, Colin.
Thank you so much. Look, guys, before we get started, let's just look at some housekeeping. Any questions that you have, throw them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. I know we've had some DMs come in as well to the team for some questions to be asked. We'll be doing the recording, and so we'll be sending that out for anyone that can't make it. And have fun. Please ask questions, listen, and we will try and get to everyone at the end. Lucy, it's over to you.
Excellent. So here we go, everybody. Super excited that we get to be here today. Again, I'm Lucy Hutchinson, and we're looking at this idea that the problem schools are facing is not simply that AI exists. We're looking at the deeper problem, and that's that the work can look complete before learning is visible. So any student can submit a polished response, and it may be organized, it may be grammatically clean, it may even be accurate. But the assignment may still not show how the student reasoned, what evidence they trusted, what changed in revision, or whether they can even transfer the idea. And that's because the student may have been a passive recipient in the entire process. So today we're not asking teachers to become detectives. We're asking a better design question. What does this assignment require students to reveal? Colin, coming right back into you.
Sorry, I was just double checking to see if there were some questions coming in from LinkedIn. Okay, Meg, if I could just pass this one on to you, please.
Meg,
you're on mute.
Yep.
All right. So in the chat, looking at here, where do assignments hide thinking now? So those of you who are participating, whether you're on our Zoom call or you're on LinkedIn, look at these categories here. You can add your own if you want to be creative and add your own flavor. But where do assignments hide thinking right now? This is something that I'm hearing a lot across the conversations I'm having with principals and district leaders. How are assignments hiding thinking? Let's put something in the chat. If you're joining us on Zoom, if you are on LinkedIn, please go ahead and let us know. Where are assignments hiding thinking? Think of one word. Hold it. All right, now send it. Let me know what you think. Lucy, I'm going to pass it back to you to see what people are saying.
Nice. Thanks, Meg. And so if we notice the spread and the words in the chat and all the words that came to your mind as Meg was speaking, words like answers, responses, assessments, everywhere. I like that one. That spread is why this cannot be solved only through policy. So the work has to move into assignment, design, teacher language, and student-facing expectations. So looking here, what we can see, especially in traditional classrooms and traditional assignments, is that most of them are clear about the product. Write the paragraph, design the experiment, complete the project, hand in the slide deck, solve the problem. But many assignments are less clear about the thinking that students have to show. Did they explain a choice? Did they defend evidence? Did they revise from feedback? Did they consider their own point of view within their work? Did they transfer the idea into something that's important to them? So this is the gap that we're working on today. We're not making assignments bigger. Instead, we're making the learning evidence clearer.
And I think that's really an important point. And I also contribute to National University's secondary credentialing program. So I help run that and design it. And one of the things that we don't do very often is think about this part that involves the what are they thinking about. We have been so product driven for so long that we tend to think, okay, well, what are the standards? And then what do we need to target to be able to reach that standard? So we've built a test, and we've kind of let the test be this thinking apparatus. Maybe it's a project, maybe it's something else more summative. But the problem is that we don't think about the thinking part, because the thinking is almost this kind of weird nebulous zone that we don't actually really target in terms of what should the end product look like to reference the students' thinking, reference their mindset, reference where they've been, reference the journey that they've traveled on. And it's something that's if you're struggling with it, or if you're struggling even thinking about like, you're not alone. Because I teach a lot of new teachers every single year, and they have the same response when we start talking about this, because National University has really started to move into and lean into what do we do with AI? And then one of the questions and focal points is, how do we show the thinking, and how do we become deliberate about it?
And I would even add to that, as someone who's been in the public education sector and grew up in public education, completion for a long time meant that you had to work to do something to get an assignment done. A lot of learning was considered a part of the completion of an assignment. So as we have AI here, that's not necessarily true. For those of us that have been around the block for a while, the goal was always completion, because when a student completed an assignment, there was the assumption that thinking and learning had become a part of that assignment.
Yeah, that the work was the thinking.
Yes.
And I think that right there is where AI has kind of swooped in, be like, hey, brother, let me do the work for you. And you're like, cool, yeah, let's do this. So the entire lens of the package, the assessment package, has to change. And I think that is what we are heading for.
And that's where Lucy shines as a wonderful teacher. And something I've heard and said a lot recently is, can I get a side of thinking with that? And that's something that I really, really, really want educators to remember as they're designing experiences for students is, can I get a side of thinking?
I love that. And you're both taking the words right out of my mouth, because before, by being able to create the product, there was an assumption involved that the thinking was happening throughout the process. Now we need to ensure that that is visible. We need to see it. We need to see it in action. So here's a slide that gives us a clear boundary in that whole process. So AI may support the production. You can use AI at times during that process, because it can help students brainstorm, summarize, outline, revise language. We always say we want AI to expand our thinking, not to let us be passive users within that process. So students still need to show human evidence. So the reasoning, the judgment, the source choice, the revision decision, and transfer. So Tori, could you let us know from a secondary lens why this might matter?
Excuse me, a little too much Diet Coke there. I would say that the transition to be able to look at where the thinking is, the largest struggle is going to be the materialization of this. And for everybody watching this, they're thinking, how do I make this happen? How do I make this work in a classroom where I've been taught product for so long? And how do I then materialize reasoning? What does judgment look like? How does, and I kind of like this one more so, showing revision choices, where you're basically metacognitively floating over the assignment and talking about how the assignment changed over time. And some of that might have been AI input, but you're making a judgment and you're summarizing what that AI input was. And so that critical analysis is also evidence of thinking. And then being able to take something that perhaps AI has contributed and then translate it into something possibly unrelated, which I've done a lot. So I think that that's the challenge here, and where we need to go from next is the practical movements on how this happens.
That's a great point, and I think that this is really important. Yesterday, I was in a classroom talking with students, and they were actively just scrolling through all of the meat of the assignment, and they were looking just for what they needed to do. What is the thing that I have to read and understand so I can turn in the product? And when we're going back and we're taking a different look at this, we're saying the goal is not to ban support with students understanding what the topic is or what the assignment is, but instead involve them in that entire process. They are actively creating and thinking. So the goal, I see it as protect and even highlight the evidence of all the thinking that's going on within the learning process.
I agree with you, Lucy, and I would say this is a topic that's brings a lot of anxiety into educators' minds as AI is a powerful tool, so safety and concerns. The idea is whether your policy is ready or not, and you've done proof points. Maybe those of you that were with us last week are already going in to try to look at evidence, or you're just trying to figure out how to tackle or implement a tool at a teacher level, really working with knowing it's part of the infrastructure. High school students are using it, whether the school has a policy or not. So grappling with this question is so essential and so important as you're designing learning experience for your children. If AI is here, what is still uniquely human? And that is at the foundation of this question. Thinking about going back to in calculators, a lot of people compare AI to calculators. I think there's vast differences, but in terms of just making it a simple explanation, when the calculator was introduced into mathematical courses, people felt there was a lot of off-put of cognitive ability, that the calculator would make people less smart. And in time, we found that when the tool was used and designed appropriately, it could actually accelerate the human cognitive ability to do more advanced math quickly. So what I would like us to grapple with is AI is here. What makes us uniquely human with our assignments to make sure that we're still having students not off put, but show us what they know.
I think this is just to interject on it. I think this, Megan, on that point, it is looking at the core skills that make us uniquely human. And it's the ones that AI can't replace, and being able to show the thinking behind the thinking. And when we're looking at in the business world, it's what leaders and employers are looking for at the moment is for students and graduates that are coming out of university. It's less about the fundamental of can you do the actual job. It's about how did you get, like what you were saying, Lucy, on how do you get to that? You know, show me how you got to the thinking behind the thinking, and looking at the 5 or 6 core human skills that make us uniquely human. For example, critical thinking, you know.
Amazing. And it's huge, the difference between I don't know and I don't know, but it kind of reminds me of, and being able to expand and find that next step forward, because there's always a next step forward. So we want to look now at an ordinary prompt. So this might be more of a traditional, something that many of us had seen when we were in school, kind of prompt from the teacher. So the question is not whether or not this is a bad assignment, if the teacher's wrong in any way. Instead, the question is looking at it and what it asks students to produce and what it asks students to reveal. So read it, take a moment, and look for what it asks for. It's asking for a paragraph, a claim, maybe evidence. And so now let's look and see what it's not clearly asking for. And then it may not ask students to name a choice, defend their source judgment, show revision decision, or transfer the idea. So students' thoughts, ideas, and reasoning are not necessarily included in the process. So that's the autopsy.
Yeah, I like this too. And if I could interject here for a second, Lucy.
Please.
One of the items on here that I think would be really interesting to add, and you can always add it, is the part of the relating the content to lived human experience. And that's something that AI is never going to be able to do. You could probably get it to fake it badly, but because of the fact that the lived human experience comes with very vivid lived details, and to be able to access those details and talk about how this, let's suppose AI does produce a paragraph, a theme, and evidence, but how does that relate to my life, the path that I've lived? That is immediately number one step you could use. Make whatever you've done and whatever path the AI has played, and then have them reflect on their own lived experience and show how that relates.
And how many times do we hear teenagers say, what does this have to do with my real life? Why am I doing this assignment?
Yeah, make them answer the question themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a powerful tool that can be a thought partner with them on how this concept could actually apply to things that they like or of interest. So application, I truly believe, Tori, and making learning personal, right? When teenagers are looking at an assignment and don't see the direct correlation between that assignment and their real life, that's where you see disconnect. So I love that comment.
I'm always writing notes during all of the webinars I attend, and I'm actually taking notes on the things that both of you all of you have said as well. So I love that as well. So again, we're not here blaming the assignment. Instead, we are finding the missing evidence of the expectation for students and making that lived human experience visible. How does it relate to you? Or better, how does it relate to me? Why do I care, right? And having students name it. I love that so much. So here's where it is. Students should be able to focus on some of these expectations. So the 4 expectations are intentionally simple. Students should be able to explain their choice, defend evidence, show revision, and transfer the idea. They put the learner in the center. So again, putting them right there. Why did the choice matter to you? When defending the evidence, why is it, or including it, why is it trustworthy for you? What makes it important for you or relevant to you? All of this. So what changed in your own thinking, and then transferring the idea as we were just talking about it, applying it to your own life. These 4 moves do not fit every assignment in the exact same way, obviously, right? So but they give teachers and leaders a clear way to ask, what thinking should still be visible here, and how can we pull it out? So this is where the assignment design becomes teacher support. We're giving teachers look-fors, not another compliance checklist. So this is the same assignment, but clear evidence. So here's the practical shift. Before, it was write a paragraph explaining the theme, and that may produce the polished completion. But after, write a paragraph explaining the theme and mark 1 sentence where your thinking changed and explain why.
And I love this from an administrator perspective when teachers are coming in worried about AI completion on assignments, where the natural instinct currently for many educators is we had turned it in for a long time. So when plagiarism was a part of education, you had a system where the system would check it for you. Well, we know right now that the AI detectors have false positives all the time, and there's a lot of issues with that, and detection is challenging. So as an administrator, I love this. How can we change your expectation? How can you make thinking visible within the assignment? So if you're worried that something looks just too polished from one of your students that you know, right? That's just too perfect, and they turn in that assignment, having them come and do a proof point or evidence of their thinking, having them, even if they, let's say they did use AI, because we know students are turning in assignments that they've completed with AI currently. Instead of sitting back and maybe grading the assignment, because that's what we've done for many, many years, teachers would have the ability to be able to go back to the student and make them show evidence of their thinking as a part of this process. And maybe I'm a little on the cutting edge here, but if people are going to, and students are going to be using AI, I'm hoping they're using it to make themselves smarter. So if they're using it, they should be able to go back into an assignment that they created and actually defend it.
100%.
They should be able to revise it.
Meg, you're right on the nose with this. National University is on, I would say, a few steps ahead of where most universities are in accepting a use policy. It was formerly called the GATE framework. It's now called RAISE 5. And that framework does exactly what you're talking about. And that's, if you have any questions and you're not sure, ask the student, because if they did the work, they should be able to talk about it. And that framework, and built into it, is the possibility that maybe they didn't. And in what we've talked about in the use cases, and the one research study that we've done so far on it, there have been a handful of situations, and all of them used AI. But the trick here, and I think this needs to go and be mentioned, this is difficult treading ground, because the accusation of cheating is pretty brutal. And I would also mention that as we go through this, one of the things that the RAISE 5 framework did well is to assume what we call bona fide, which is good faith, that the student was acting in good faith, and that you, the teacher, are also acting in good faith. So you ask them to, you know what, I just need to hear a little bit more about what you thought about this, talk to me. Well, what happens if they fail that test? Okay. Well, at the university level, and I would imagine that this could be very easily transferred to most any other level. And that's, you have 48 hours to redo it with no penalty. Show me your thinking. Give me some more of you in here. And then they now have the opportunity to go do it without penalty, realizing that they had been confronted, that they're not going to be able to get involved with that, little AI shenanigans anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I think that what you mentioned there, Meg, is very important and need to be expanded on a little bit, because that's getting into that academic honesty thing can.
Sorry, I agree with you. I think but we're in such new ground as well, aren't we? When you look at, obviously AI has been around since the 1950s, 1960s, the same as virtual reality, but it's only really been in the last 4 years that, AI, especially with the large language models, that it's taken the world by storm. And so a lot in education worldwide is playing catch up. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer at the moment, that we're trying to, everyone's trying to find, okay, what's the best solution? But again, that framework that you're talking about, obviously we worked together on some of that. I think it helps with looking at the thinking behind the thinking. I'd also like just to quickly mention as well, so welcome Stephen for joining. So please put any questions in to the chat when you have it. So back to you, Lucy.
Great. And I just, thinking about everything that you all just shared there, I think that this is part of the reason why we can keep the assignments that we've had before, but what we can do is shift them. So we're asking for clear evidence. And that way, whenever you talk to your students about it, if they've included their perspective, then you can easily say, well, expand upon that. And that brings that kind of clarity. So again, it comes down to, like, what are we really focusing on? And if we really are focusing on learning and teaching and sharing knowledge, I think that this is the path forward. So I'm going to invite everybody to look at the handout that we shared earlier. And if we could put that in the chat just in case somebody doesn't have it yet, we're going to look and see if we can build the artifact for today. And this is the Learning Evidence Expectation card. So if we all look and consider one of our real assignments that we have, we don't have to find anything that's like the perfect assignment or the perfect example, and not the biggest assignment that we have. Just choose one that already exists, or one that's quite common for you, and let's see if we can make it more clear. So this card has 6 parts: the task, the thinking, the demand, AI support that's involved, the human evidence requirement, the teacher look for, and the student facing instruction. So for here, this is what your learning expectation, the evidence expectation card is going to look like. We're going to take 2 minutes here. So the goal again is to make one assignment clearer, not bigger. Go ahead and write the task, name the thinking demand, decide what kind of AI support students can use, and then name what the students must still show. Colin, if you could keep an eye on the time for us, and we'll just...
I will keep an eye on the time. And for anyone that's that's joined us now, that doesn't have the workbook, please check your emails. For anyone that's watching this later on the replay, we will have sent it on when we resend this out, so you can watch the replay. There'll be a link in the email to download the workbook. And of course, everyone is welcome. If you have any questions after the fact, you can find any of us that are on LinkedIn, and our emails will be available as well. So you can reach out to any one of us for help with filling in the workbook.
Thank
Right,
you,
the
Colin.
timer is set, Lucy.
Appreciate that. So again, keep
Countdown.
it rough. It's a usable first draft. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to read that Stephen shared it in the chat that Brown University professor had his students do their summative assessment live. And
Yeah, it's a
the
great insight.
right, the grades dropped dramatically for all but a few students. I think that this is important because, as we were discussing earlier, students are no longer accustomed to being asked to think or to show their thinking or to be involved in their own applying their own understanding in a way. Normally it's one correct answer, and if you don't have that exactly as is, you're out. So this is a different way. We are changing the system for students in real time.
And I think that there was a study, and I can't remember the exact number, so please don't quote me, but it's I think completion of homework was up about 80%, but proficiency on assessment was down 20 to 30%. So the evidence, this gap, right? So if teachers aren't really doing this work, so as you're thinking about your assignment right now and you're becoming proactive, the evidence will show up later in proficiency scores, remediation, credit recovery, because the students will be completing their assignments and earning grades that maybe don't show the thinking that those assignments were meant to prove. So
Meg, let me interrupt you for a second and ask you from an administrative perspective. Would you, as an administrator, look at, let's say, a teacher that was perhaps stepping on the pacing guide in order to do this? Because the processes that we're talking about here are time consuming. And so where's the balance here between, following the pacing guide and then ensuring that you do things like we're mentioning here? Where's the balance point there?
I think you can't bite out the whole apple at one time. So as teachers that are professionals and you're prepping and planning, so I'm thinking a high school teacher during their prep period, if they pulled out this card, a learning evidence card, and we're looking for portions or places in that module, excuse me, or that assignment or that lesson that they really wanted to make sure hit home. So looking at your priority standards, if you're in California and you're looking at those standards that are essential, right? Those skills that we know students must need to be successful in life. Those are where I would really look for learning evidence. Picking the most important parts of your lesson and having students re-engage in those processes. I don't think you want this on overkill, right? I think you want to be really, really intentional about when you put it in. And I think what we're asking for is not a teacher to also revise a lesson or a course that they've completed for a long time. What we're saying is the output that you actually ask for the students to give you needs to look a little differently. And specifically, what to do when a teacher is worried a child has used AI to complete an assignment. This is not then a detective piece. This then becomes, okay, AI detection says, did AI write this? What we're asking a student to do is make their thinking visible. Can you apply, revise, and defend your work? And to me, that's going to be creating those skills that Colin talks about. And many of us have portrait of a learner skills in our email bylines or maybe on a poster on the wall. But when you're forcing a student to go back to their work and actually practice those skills, you're going to find success. So Lucy, I'm going to kick that back to you. I hope that answered your question, Tori. Being really intentional and doing little small steps, one move that you think you can improve visibility as a part of your.
Let me hear this. You said revise. And then what was the second one?
You can revise your assignment. You can defend it.
Okay.
So you need to defend if you have an assignment
Revise.
that AI write, defend, explain it. You better be able to explain what you wrote, because if AI wrote it and you just turned it in, most kids, you ask them 2 questions and they won't be able to tell you what it says. And you better be able to apply it.
Okay. So if we could take R, A, and D, you just have to get rad with it. Right?
And there's a smile story from Tori. I love that, Tori. So we can be rad. And
rad.
Yes.
That is rad. I appreciate
revise, analyze, and what was the D? Defend. There it is. Get rad.
Get rad.
Yes. Yeah. Or it could be like raid, which we don't want that.
Yeah.
This is huge. And my personal work with teachers, every little bit of that, Tori, that's done, I've seen it pay off in full. So there are less products that you're able to point to, but there's more thinking going on, which then every evidence point, every data point that we've seen shows students' assessments levels going up. So the more time that we spend thinking, so it is a delicate balance, right? But if you have to decide as the educator in the classroom, do I want my students just to finish a worksheet, or do I want them to spend some time thinking? Yeah, I think we need definitely examples of both of those happening. So in the worksheet, maybe if somebody needs it for compliance, but that's the least important thing for me as an educator. So here we're going to look at the student clarity moves. So if students can use AI, the instruction has to say what still belongs to them. So students shouldn't have to guess what counts as acceptable support or what evidence they must still show. So we can use this frame. AI can be an amazing tool to help push our thinking forward. So you can use AI to expand your thinking to support blank. You're still responsible for showing blank. So including this step can definitely lower confusion for students and for us as the educators, but the way that we frame it matters. And so Meg, you touched on this a little bit earlier. If you could tell us a little bit more.
I did. I think that there's a lot of people who are using some of the platforms out there. And I think universities are, and Tori, you're going to have to help me with this too, from a university lens, maybe outside of national, who's really forward thinking, what you're seeing just from professors, maybe in the field. But we're seeing a lot of people kind of use that turn it in style. It's a natural place to go. Well, if you're using AI, then I'm going to go to an AI detector, and that's just not acceptable. And so as we're kind of backing it up, and Stephen made a great comment, why don't you just start with students having to think visibly? And this is all dated back to the 1960s, guys. None of this is new. Harvard has Project Zero that's been around for a really long time. That's always talked about pedagogical importance of making learning visible. So yes, you're going to have microcosms and micro pockets of people who believe in this work. And you're nodding with us and saying, yep, I believe that learning visibility is here. But it's just like my mom said when I was a kid. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So it's really, really important that when we're putting this type of evidence into lesson planning, that it doesn't come across as punitive. Students already are defensive when teachers are using AI to create their lessons, but students are not allowed to use AI to actually complete the assignment. That's a big issue going on. Reddit's conversations and tasks talk about that all the time.
And
So-
you're not too far off, Megan. I just had a conversation with some people about a month ago from 3 different universities, and all 3 of them are struggling with this, and they're all in detective mode. They all want to play CSI with the AI, and it's almost like nerds are weird. They want to, it's like they want to challenge themselves to find it, dissect it. And I'm like, how much time are you spending on this? So they are not quite yet in a place to where I think that they've thought about leaning into the AI. National University across 5 different colleges have all been in the same position. We're not sure we want to really advise this or even lean into it yet, because they haven't yet figured out where AI's place is and how do they leverage it to enhance their program. They are, I don't want to say stuck, but kind of stuck.
Well, and I think I respect that.
Operational methods.
I think for some of us who are technologically or risk takers, right? So I would say notoriously educators are not often risk takers. They like structure. They like routine, and specifically professors who are in maybe the research field, they sure do love research. We're getting a lot of research out right now about the implications of artificial intelligence and cognitive offloading, and universities are starting to do some amazing research on this topic. But I think there is a level of those professors that are tenured, that have been around for a while, not being as comfortable with this new technology as the younger generation. So there is a learning curve that needs to be talked about. Teachers need support here. They need professional development. And here's the reality. It's like Pandora's out of the box. So what people want to do is try to squeeze AI back into, I call it a milk carton, right? So the hole's poked and people are trying to go around the milk jug and put Band-Aids, and it's just not working. It's leaking. And instead of using the milk to create a new recipe. So it's going to spill out no matter what you do. Use it to create something new. So we have to kind of shift our thinking. Remember, our system's been around for a really long time. The patterns that we put into the system are not new. People have been doing this for a long time, and people are creatures of habit. It's natural. So here is this disruptive technology that people may or may not be comfortable learning. That's a real truth. And then those that are comfortable are going to be leaping forward with solutions, while those that aren't are still sitting in the same faculty tower. They're the same department. So the humans in the room are all at different stages of this. So the only way we can really support them is really looking at taking the surveillance off. Because the amount of time that a teacher would take to actually go in and try to determine whether or not this is AI or not becomes fruitless, because the end result is what? That the student completed the assignment with AI, or the student has to defend their own thinking. Either way, the student needs to defend their work in that scenario. So either way, the end result needs to be defense.
And just on
so,
that point, Meg,
sorry.
just
Yep.
the surveillance, just, what you're talking about here is the latest models that have just been released now in the next batch of models. The humanizer text is able to bypass all of the latest detectors. And there's a new app floating around schools and universities that what it's actually doing, it runs in the browser and it types out whatever you have from another screen. So if you've got something on this screen and it's used AI, so you kind of, a lot of the detections are looking at chunks of text being pasted into, into Google Work Classroom or into Canvas, etc. This types it out at natural human speed to get around the detectors. And the latest versions that are being tested, none of the AI detectors can actually detect it, that it's AI. So we have to look at these other solutions.
And a consequence to that, Colin, is that students are notorious at loving to game a system.
Absolutely, that's what I do.
Teenagers and college students want to game a system, right? So here you have a tool that's teaching people. So what do we want to teach them? Do we want to teach them how to use AI to be more human? Or do we want them to actually use their brain and actually think? So the challenge is that we can teach them, and I did write about this, what are we teaching children? If we're using AI detectors, they're going to be gaming the system, just like you said, Colin. They're going to be taking advantage of the most advanced technologies to look more human. When in fact, we're missing the opportunity to make sure that if AI complete the assignment, that the students need evidence of what's uniquely theirs within the assignment and what they must do as a human to get the grade. And I think that's a new way to think.
I think that you've got an interesting point there too, and I might add also, why would kids use AI? I mean, learning inherently is not a displeasurable thing. So why use the AI? Perhaps it's something interest driven. Perhaps it's boredom. Perhaps it's like, I got better things to do than to do this. Perhaps it's the situation where there's a lack of glue for attention and interest in the stuff that we designed. If only there was a program that could teach you how to do narratives and create AI-based. Steven's laughing because he knows where I'm going with this. But I mean, to take into account that the very act of the creating of this itself, this is where I think teachers could benefit from this as well, is to take some of the creative and bizarre and be able to do something that is actually interesting. And that might be a whole different discussion, I realize. But I was just, thinking motive. What is the motive to use the AI? And by having something interesting, I mean, I wouldn't want the dog eating my dessert, but I sure don't mind if he eats my vegetables.
But Tori, this is exactly what we're talking about, why we put the student back into the center of their own learning, making it about them. Defend your choice. Why did that brainstorming that you did with AI, why did that one resonate with you? Why did you choose that? Why does it matter to you? And so I want to bring the conversation back here to look at this. How are we putting the learner back into the center of the learning? So I'm going to invite everybody, and if you all want to, please don't hesitate to participate. Put in an idea that you have for your own student-facing instructions. Oh, Colin, I'm going to just run with this. So I'll read a couple examples and name why they work once those come in. But I have to just mention right away, one example from a math teacher. The last time we spoke and discussed this with teachers. I love this one. So let me find it here. It's you may use AI to check whether your final answer is correct. You are still responsible for showing every step you took to get there in your own handwriting.
Can I get a side of thinking with that? I felt like that was a part of that.
Right? Exactly. I'm looking in the chat too. I love it. I see there's a nice conversation going in the chat. Love that. And the instructions, yes, apply the concepts to your daily life. Love it. And then another one that is like perfect, that would be perfect for my 14-year-old, thinking about the way that she's doing her assignments when it comes to creating slide decks and presentations. You may use AI to help design your slides. You are still responsible for showing you can answer one unscripted question about any slide during your talk. Love that.
I love
think
that
that
because I think it's, it's showing that you have to, if you have to present that back in front of a classroom. In fact, actually, it's quite a bit of the stuff that we've done with the VR stuff that we've taught in the classrooms, taking the kids to the moon, they're learning physics, etc. But at the end of the 2-week exploration, they need to do a presentation back, right? So, but they can use AI, through the course of it. So I absolutely love that.
excellent. Yes, and this is showing that strong language. It tells students what support is allowed and what thinking they still own. So that's the point of this card. So this card is not just an assignment tool. Leaders can use this in PLC planning, assignment review, coaching, policy implementation, and teacher support.
I love this from an administrative perspective. When you're responsible, we talked last week about policy and proof points, right? Having this assignment card available during a walkthrough, when a superintendent's walking through, and showing what you're doing as an educator to respond to this time. Maybe being a little ahead of the curve of your current area, allowing for teachers to have something they can tangibly do. Teachers always want a next best move that they can always do to support their children and making sure that they're thinking. Teachers don't want this tool to be used as a cognitive offload tool. They want their classes and their grades to mean something. And so when they're worried about a student using artificial intelligence, this card allows for them to just have a simple tool. It's just a simple one. You would need to modify it and make it your own. But the idea is that student-centered approach and how amazing it is to have the policy become living. The reason why you have an AI policy is because you want students to be able to access that powerful technology safely. So if they're acting on it safely, and let's say that the systems are doing well, how does that impact learning? Because ultimately, every policy needs to get down to the student to make sure that the student is learning. And so this is a proof point that an administrator could use with their staff to support in student engagement, student learning, and ensuring that visibility of a student's thought process while using this powerful tool becomes essential.
That's huge. And I know that we talked quite a bit about this already, but again, I just want to bring this to the focus because we are not using our time. If we're already with limited time, then why would we use it being detectives?
And I think that the limited time part, Lucy, is an important point. We've got 35 plus kids in a room, one teacher, if you're lucky, an aide. But for the first time in perhaps the history of education, we have this tool that has the possibility of guiding cognitive ability and to providing expert level experience, expert level guidance. IXR has this product called Nexus, and the wonderful thing about it is when you take the use of AI, right? So you have it, let's say, a middle school student that could use AI to, let's say, address homework on GPT or Claude or whatnot. The difference here is that the Nexus doesn't provide just answers; it forces the question, which is most AIs don't do that, not untrained. And so you give it something, it's going to give you answers back. But I like the fact that this is not easy to do, and this is part of the reason why I think that the Nexus product is such an interesting thing, is that it never answers the question. It provides you the steps that you can take to get you to the thing that you need to learn. And that by itself, when you have students that need help, and we're now working in a ubiquitous environment where students end up learning in the weirdest places, on camping trips, in the back of mom's car while she's at Walmart, on the way to the airport. It's everywhere. And it's in all these places. And so if you've got the help and the parents aren't around, and let's face it, not all the parents are algebra savvy anymore. Maybe they were at one point.
Maybe.
Well, maybe not now. So to have something that provides you with not scripted guidance, but the opportunity, let's say thoughtful guidance, I think that it's a very powerful thing, and it's something that Nexus does extraordinarily well. that normal AIs just off the street don't.
Well, and it's
Tori, can I just stop there? I just want to bring Stephen in because I know Stephen, you had a question as you in the chat. So if we can just quickly move to Stephen, if that's okay.
Oh, I was just going to chime in a bit earlier, but we're a bit past that. But I'll speak up going forward as
Okay, fantastic. Over to you, Meg.
awesome. So Tori, thank you for bringing that up. And one of the big pieces, and Colin, your experience here in business is vital, is that we gave you a tool for an individual teacher, right? And the timing piece of doing something like this at scale is often hard. And scalability can't rely on high quality teachers. It needs to be something that can scale without the human, but just the system, the standard operating procedure should be able to be done by anyone sitting in the seat. So this is why we did create IXR Nexus. It is a visibility layer that supports in one next best move. So using their teachers' current assignments, this visibility layer sits on top and allows for proof points, checking your thinking, having one-on-one bounded school-approved AI to make sure that students have one-on-one support based on a teacher's class. This team is experienced educators. This is a big issue. AI has made this problem bigger than ever. This has always been a problem in education. Students being able to usurp thinking and completing assignments. This is something that's not new. AI has made this much bigger, though, because the powerful tool can do it so much more successfully in a way that changes the dynamic of how we need to think and design learning. So, Lucy, thank you so much for today. Thank you for guiding us and making sure we remember, all of us, that the student must be at the center, and that since AI is here, instead of using detection, making sure we have evidence and making sure we're telling students exactly what is theirs. If they are using the tool, what makes them uniquely human.
Excellent. Yes. And with that, I'm just to encourage everyone to put a time limit, to give yourself this challenge. So for those of you that are live with us right now, by Friday, I will, and it can be any sort of expectation, revise one assignment so the thinking is easier to see, even if it's a tiny move, something for you. If you are watching this on replay, set a goal for a couple days from now for one step forward. Like I said, it can be a tiny step. And I want to thank you all for doing this work of design and not just discussing it, but actually being there to do it with your students. This is how we make the conversation and the work practical and useful and deep.
And Lucy, so many people say to me, well, I don't have authority to do that. I'm not responsible for my AA policy, but you are responsible to make one next best move for students knowing they're using AI. And this evidence tool gives you as a teacher. Individual humans make a lot of positive small change in an organization. So using this evidence tool to make a positive change in your learning environment within your control is something I highly encourage you to do. And those that are decision makers, looking at evidence of how you can make this scalable. If you're interested in learning more about our product, we'd love to hear from you. But the future of learning is not going to depend on guessing who did AI. This game of being a detective is going to only last so long. At some point, we have to make sure that we are looking at redesigning what is expected of students and assignments. Completion cannot equal learning all the time. And so it's important that we look at completion as being just what it is, something that's done. And learning must be rad, according to Tori.
I'm not wrong about that.
All right, guys, what have we got? We got 10 minutes left. We've had about over 20 questions sent in from our community.
Okay.
So I'm going to nip through a couple of these questions before we wrap up. But before we do, Stephen, you're live with us. Did you have any questions for us before we jump onto our community questions?
Yeah, I kind of have a view that the formative assessments should carry a lot of the demonstration of application in a student's life, so that there's no question that they're working with the concepts that are being presented. I think the idea of giving a student assignment and then grading a paper is kind of in the past at this point.
Yeah, pedagogy, formative assessments are so powerful. It's very much a proactive approach. Unfortunately, we see a lot of educators really reacting. So when you have a pattern and a history of using formative assessment in a way that drives instruction, right? And it's not only instruction, but knowledge, like you said, Stephen, who grasps the concepts. What's my bell curve look like for this particular concept in the class so that you can adjust? And the best teachers do. And amazing, think of a formative assessment and then having this evidence tool as a part of some of the assignments, where you're just looking at simple ways that you can make thinking visible on something you've done maybe with students for years.
That's huge. And I actually, when I'm working with students, many times I want them to use AI to initiate the process, to start it. And that becomes like the benchmark, the baseline. Now, what do we do with what you have pulled out, and how do we build upon that?
I would suggest that if you're allowing the students to begin with AI, you might want to allow them to continue with AI for deep learning. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept that people call deep learning, but the idea is that you have to really engage with the material in a recursive way. And AI allows that recursion to happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, so when designed correctly, we talked a little bit, Stephen, about, AI being a Ferrari. You wouldn't hand a 5-year-old a Ferrari, right? So we need to make sure that when we're using AI, we're designing it for experiences that are age appropriate, but also experiences that as you become, I know you're most likely in the college realm or maybe even the high school realm, when students are beginning to understand literacy, the best way for them to learn is actually engaging with it and with the goal of deep thinking. And that should be something I'm hoping every educator has at the center of their pedagogy and planning.
For a 5-year-old, I would have the parents be the focus of the AI work if I were allowing any AI work for a 5-year-old at all.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a 5-year-old being forced to interact with intelligent systems and modern interfaces. It's a death trap, I think, for the intellect.
It's a big debate. And someone who was a first grade teacher for many, many years, I was very picky about what types of technology were even allowed in my classroom. Because the developmental appropriateness of technology needs to align with student increase in proficiency at the age. And so minimal exposure that really aligns with increased proficiency on a concept or skill is okay. Continuous exposure, in my experience, as someone who's implemented significant technologies across the career for young ones, needs to be taken into deep consideration. And that's where you're seeing a lot of policies pull back screen time for younger students. So this debate is real, Stephen. And I think the big point here is that when you're using something as powerful as artificial intelligence, that you're designing it, the universal design of learning, where you're looking at UDL and you're looking at high quality pedagogy and instruction that's not ignoring the brain development, age appropriateness, and the total outcome. So ideally, standards are one way, but looking at what your deep learning involves so much more than standards. And what I would challenge is that if you look at these skills that are rad, if you look at revision, application, right, defending your work, those skills oftentimes get put in a bucket of hard skills or soft skills, I'm sorry, where you're looking at these supplemental, skills that are supplemental. In fact, we are arguing at IXR, it is essential and they are hard skills. These skills where students are applying are actually specific behaviors that lead to increased proficiency. And when organizations focus on these skills, where you're looking at, climbing the taxonomy, using synthesis as your goal, application, actually creating something with something that you knew is going to be the students that exhibit those types of behavior are going to be the ones that are very successful in an AI-driven world.
Fantastic. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Stephen. We have time for one question. Some of these other questions we'll get to in our next session in next week, and some of the other ones we will answer on our IXR Real Talk podcast. So let me just pick one of these now. So Meg, because I've got you, I'm going to give this one directly to you.
Okay.
Okay. You ready? This is a good one.
I am.
Okay.
What happens if a student uses artificial intelligence to generate an explanation of their thinking?
So you're saying, so teacher says, hey, I want you to do a proof point, and the student goes back and uses AI to do the proof point. Is that the question?
Correct.
Okay,
That's the question.
so this is where the teacher needs to use their teacher judgment, right? So when you're looking at creating opportunity for students to explore in application, revision, and explanation, there's many ways in which a teacher can have a student do a proof point. There may be some students that you have them go back and handwrite, highlight, circle. Those are things that AI currently can't do successfully. So print it out and hand it to them. If you are in a non-classroom based or asynchronous environment, how would you do that? You might have a group chat or a chat being available in your Canvas class, your group discussion. Some may say, oh, you're using AI for that. If the teacher is so concerned about a student using AI, I would strongly encourage a one-on-one connection. I don't think that's realistic at scale. But the idea would be, is the student increasing in their ability to defend, explain, and revise? So at our world, and with Nexus, if a student were to use artificial intelligence over and over and over again, remember AI is a mirror. There's going to be a plateau for the student, right? If they're constantly copying and pasting answers and they're never using their beautiful minds, the technology is not going to magically increase their cognitive ability. It's going to keep them at a level. So what the rigor needs to increase, the questions need to increase, and the opportunities need to shift. So what I would say is that teachers are amazing at creating environments where students can share and show what they know. I think that's more important. The old show and tell isn't just for kindergarteners anymore. It is something that needs to be done through the high school realm. It's not realistic every day, and it's not realistic for every assignment. But it is something where if you pick certain strategies, you will be able to have differentiation of how they're showing what they know. And the idea would be, if you are a teacher paying attention to depth and complexity of knowledge, are they able to advance the human skills that we know are RAD, or now Lucy's calling it RAP. So now I have to decide which one that I'm using. But this is where our technology at Nexus is so powerful, because what we have done is looked at observable learning behaviors. And if a student is continually plateauing, it gives teachers one next best move to help them gain depth and complexity in their knowledge. This is based on years and years of research and a lot of observable learning options for students. And teachers are exhausted. The idea is, I have 180 kids on my caseload if I'm a high school teacher. That's normal in California. And so 180 students, I have to do a next best move for all of them. This is where we come in, looking at scaling this idea, making learning visibility reachable within the assignments that you already have, giving teachers 20 minutes a day to have proof points throughout their thinking. And if IXR Nexus, if it's connected to your beautiful Canvas or Google Classroom course, the AI will also pop up and ask questions at perfect points throughout the assignment that the teacher puts to make sure the students is communicating verbally what they're thinking and how they're engaging with your course. So the idea is, you've already written awesome assignments. IXR Nexus can support you in showing proof and evidence of learning in the assignments you've already created.
Meg, let me just jump in, because I love everything that you just said. And Colin, I know that we're pressed for time, but I cannot resist this opportunity.
That's okay. The floor is all yours, Lucy. Take it away.
Imagining this happening, and I'm thinking about it when I'm in the classroom. We've been doing and recommending turn-in talks for a million years, right? So if you are working the room, if you're accustomed to that as the educator, if the student has been pushed to show their thinking with Nexus, or in written any kind of response where it's like, okay, how have you pushed your own thinking? What is your opinion on this? In a turn and talk, you're excited now to talk about the things that you know, because it's about you. It's about your ideas. And so if you're in a small group of 3 or 4, and you as the teacher, as the facilitator, you're walking around, you're working the room, you're listening to the conversations happening. And if you see that there's a student that has nothing to say, then you can either work with them individually or ask them something pointed. And that way you can show them what the expectation is. We all love to rise to the occasion, but we have to give each other the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And there's no perfect answer right now. So what I'd say is, do one next best move. One small thing that you can do today to improve visibility of learning within your learning environment, within your control, whether it's with your team as an administrator on your campus, in your district, if you're a superintendent, if you're a teacher in your classroom, if you're a parent with your child. This is something that's easy to be translated across all things in this world full of technology. We need to keep the humans in the center. The students' minds are our priority. So thankful that you could join us today.
Fantastic,
See you next
everyone. Thank you
week.
so much. I think that the key is here is keeping humans in the loop, and
Yes.
we can show thinking and the visibility behind it. This is a wrap for this session. So everyone that has joined directly through the Zoom link or through email, you will be getting a copy of the replay, and it will be in your email. For any of you that are watching it, streaming it on LinkedIn or seeing it on our YouTube channel, if you are missing anything from the workbooks or anything like that and you need a copy of it, just send either a DM or comment below where you're watching the video, and one of our team, will get the information to you. Thank you, everyone, for today. Megan, Lucy, Tori, Anna, Cam, and Stephen for joining. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
See everyone in the next session.
See you
Take
next
care.
session. Bye-bye.